Okay, so something happened the other day. Or really not something happened, but I don't even know how I started off like that. Some guys were having a conversation the other day. Some turned out guys, and one of them was talking about how he likes getting his butt ate. And I don't know how the conversation started. I only really started to notice like some minutes in because they were kind of loud and I was already sitting near them. This was at a resource center type thing. And so anyway, to get to the point, they started talking about this one dude who I guess was there for the first time because I never saw them before, although I've only known about the place for like a few months. So anywho, they were talking about look at that dude right there. He's gay as H-E double hockey sticks. Gay as and they were like, I bet he's gonna eventually come nuts one day, secretly asking us to F him. And it's really funny though, because I have good discernment, but also with some guys especially, it really manifests a lot just in like their face and facial features, and that's why I even believe that aside from like the Marine Kingdom side, it's also like the hormone warfare that's been going on for forever. Cause like a lot of people have metabolic issues and stuff from like the food and just eating too much carbs and different things like that. Or even they're like unknowingly intersex, which who has the money to even really get chromosome testing. And so they have like hormonal imbalances and extra chromosomes and stuff that people commonly never really know about. And then weed causes high estrogen as well. That's why like some guys who smoke weed, not saying he does, but some guys who do, and also like may have metabolic issues and a bad diet, are often really skinny, and sometimes they're like already Jezebelic, and then the high estrogen makes them worse and more like abusive, which may kind of be like a side thing, kind of like how Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, although I think he does shrooms or something. So I met this one boy in Cali who was really skinny, and he reminded me of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. And it made me think back to like how a lot of these guys are skinny with high estrogen, they can't gain muscle, and they have either hypothyroidism unknowingly, whichever one makes a person skinnier, because I sometimes get them mixed up. It's kind of like with type 2 diabetes and type 1, although people never hear about type 1. But yeah, anywho, there's a hormone warfare. Like, there's this one point in time where people were saying the sink water's making people GAY, and people just labeled it off as a conspiracy theory. But, I mean, there was estrogen in the sink water, and people were talking about how it could turn male frogs, it could turn male frogs into women, but I don't really think that had anything to do with necessarily the hormone warfare. I mean, that can definitely like maybe speed up the process, but I think frogs just do that in general. I think, if I'm remembering right, kind of like how roaches can have, all roaches can have babies apparently. If you know, you know. But anyhow, to get back to the point. So yeah, I already have good discernment, but for these guys, it often manifests in their facial features. And like a lot of them, you'll even notice that they have like thighs and a butt. That's why I say it's really the hormone warfare as well, other than like all the trauma being turned out and the family dysfunction that leads to this, and even the generational marine spirits and stuff. Because it's like, in fact, I remember some years ago I would talk about how I noticed that the guys are thick and the women aren't. Like, a lot of the guys have butts and even chests and everything. And then some of them, like, if they have like a high-pitched soft voice and like different things like that, some of them these days would get labeled off as autistic or something. which the autism label is just like all the other labels. There's no real test for any of them, and so like anybody could get the label for any and everything, which may not even really be the criteria, or somebody else could get the label and have exact opposite issues. But anywho, they were talking about how he was obviously turned out, and it was just funny to me because like the moment I saw him, I could already see like the perversion stuff, and he was already looking at me and all that stuff, and like his girlfriend was sitting by him, which honestly I thought that like she was a dude or something, but either she's buff and then he's like, well, he's not that skinny to be honest, but I don't know what else to say about it. But it's just funny because it's like I had already picked up that one, he likes younger people or people who are too young for him, and of course that he's just turned out in general. And I've noticed a lot, especially since being where I'm at now, that guys often have the ability to tell when other guys have the same issues they have sexually. And I noticed that sometimes they can, and like some of them, the sexual predator guys will sometimes like not want to admit that they want to get with me or somebody else because they feel like someone else may like confront them, but realistically majority of the people around, and sometimes in certain environments all of them, especially with the guys, they feel the same way. The women don't care either way, and there's that. But yeah, they were talking about how like a lot of guys, no, they were talking about he's GAY as if and with the woman, and they were talking about how it's sad that a lot of guys marry women knowing that they like men. And what else was it? What else did they say? Oh, and they said it was due to like their family and stuff like that. But honestly, as far as I could care, all of it is just trauma and spiritual and the hormone warfare. None of that stuff is really real, and as far as I could care as well, without sex, there is no sexuality. Same way, I don't really see the reason behind people running around calling themselves non-offending pedos, if I can even say that much. Because it's like, I mean, sure, due to like spiritual and demonic stuff, you may have the attraction, which, to be truthfully honest, like as far as chomoism, that's been normalized since the beginning of time. Well, not the beginning of time, since ancient times. So, I mean, people see that as okay everywhere, regardless of people now wanting to like pretend they don't more. And I mean, some people definitely don't, but it's like, I don't want to go over the whole minor crisis thing again, but people are really hypocritical and biased, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But that's normalized everywhere anyway, so a lot of people, and obviously law enforcement, could care less whether you want to get with people that are too young for you or people that laws may sometimes claim are too young. It's all really confusing with that, but either way, without sex there is no sexuality anyway, so it's kind of like people, just like with the mental label stuff, because these actually are mental labels, and some of them were at some point in time, but not anymore. People run around claiming these labels and stuff, but realistically it's all trauma and spiritual stuff, and revolves around metabolic issues and stuff as well. So it's like you're not being taught to fix the issues or think about why you have the issues. You're just being taught to label yourself and then say, well, this is okay and this is just who I am and all that. And I mean that with all the mental labels. And then it also puts you in a victim complex, and you'll be sitting on the internet talking about how would you feel if you were born attracted to children, whatever quote-unquote children means at what point in time. I guess it seems to depend, but... And then also, like, people labeling off babies as children, and, like, it's definitely different categories. But I don't know if I'm about to go off onto long, irrelevant rant. But, like, I don't even know what to say about it. It's just there to normalize things, pretty much. The point of labels is to normalize things, and also to blame victims, depending on what the label is. But people are, like, really just sucked into this stuff. And it's like, people do know that at the end of the day, I don't know if this is even going to make sense, but sexual things are just sexual things. You don't really have to do any of them or need to. People are literally being dragged into believing that paraphilias and having sex with whatever in the world is an identity. People are being made to believe that sex is an identity, and also that if they're not even doing anything sexual, that they have some sexual paraphilia label, even though realistically, if you're not doing the sexual thing, then you really don't have it, because without sex there is no sexuality anyways. Like, for example, as I've mentioned in a couple other videos I have in my hypothetically pedo playlist, where I talk about just different paraphilias in general and my own experiences, which I've talked about a lot since 14. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, I mentioned, like, for example, the whole thing with the girls that say that they're lesbians, but they're always getting with chomos who are grown men. So it'll be like, I'm a lesbian, but they're never even dating or looking at other girls. They're always talking to or getting with. They're really, of course, being abused by, like, old guys, which is why they got turned out in the first place. But, well, also another thing, I always mention that family dysfunction in general can cause you to become turned out. And it's also generational sexual issues, because, like, as people say, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So just like how if you have Munchausen cash for kids system abusers and you're the scapegoat, they're gonna throw whatever mental label onto you. Maybe they'll just say that you're slow or crazy and not really give any specific label. But let's say they say that you're autistic or whatever label. If you really have it, they have it too. And it's the same with paraphilias, commonly. So, like, people will talk about how their kids are GAY and stuff like that, which actually I have a video about this titled Your Mom is GAY, Your Dad's GAY, something like that. But realistically, if their kid is turned out, they probably are too. And one of the parents is, or maybe one of the parent is way older than the other, and it's just something happened and it's passed down pretty much. What was I saying? There's something else. I was supposed to be getting at something, but I don't remember what it was. I think I was talking about, oh yeah, people just claiming these different labels. In fact, no, I was just thinking about this yesterday. So I was thinking about this girl I knew in the little 3 months of school I went to, which I'm not going to go into that because I'll be way somewhere else. And so we were talking about dating, and I asked her, I don't remember what I said. I don't remember that much about the situation in general. I just know that I asked her something about what type of boys she liked or something like that. And then she was talking about some, I think boys are cute, but I only like girls because I don't like what's in their pants because it's gross and boys are gross. And it's like, she didn't actually like claiming labels, so she didn't like the whole black or white label or the different alphabet labels, so she wasn't into, like, labeling herself. But it's still like she was still trying to identify with, like, these labels, and it's like, it doesn't really sound like, which I don't really believe that you really could actually, like, I don't even know how to put it. Like, the paraphilias are all spiritual. It's not really you necessarily. It's trauma and then spirits that want you to do things because they want it. Hopefully I'm explaining this right, but anywho, I was like, you don't like girls, you're just a kid who still thinks boys are girls. That was pretty much what I said. And either way, it's a trauma symptom, and most of the kids were turned out, because as I always said, when I was in GA, which is, it's really common everywhere, like in the South especially, but it reminds me of the West Coast as well, but everybody, all the kids, male or female, had been essayed by mom, dad, cousin, family friend, teacher, whoever, literally everybody. And so everybody was turned out, or either, especially if they were a boy, trying really hard to not be turned out and trying to just date girls and stuff, or just avoid relationship type stuff as a whole, to avoid falling into the cycle of liking boys or whatever. But realistically, sexual addiction has this gravitational pull, and it's always gonna pull in whoever can't fight it. And that's like for any type of sexual addiction or paraphilia. Okay, now I'm following this. Another thing, going back to those guys and how they could like tell this stuff about this dude, it also makes me think about another guy who had paraphilia issues, which ran in his family. His mom was R-worded, pretty sure he was R-worded. His uncle broke into their house butt naked one day and jumped through the window to essay his sister. His dad was physically abusive, but luckily his dad used his physical abuse skills to beat up the uncle with their mom. And his daughter was R-worded by the mom's boyfriend, and the mom kept trying to not allow the dad around because she obviously wanted it to happen. These women say whatever in the world, but... And then she was given money to not say anything. The dude's just been walking around freely as they all do, because most of the guys around here obviously are that anyway, so they're sexual predators. The women are too. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, his niece was R-worded by her mom's boyfriend. In fact, he actually SHOT'd the girl and threw her in the woods somewhere, and of course he gets to walk around free, but the cops come and try to arrest me every 3 months while he just goes and lives his life every day after not only R-wording her but also unaliving her. And then there was another kid that found her body while playing hide and seek. And now this dude's daughter is dating a dude that's his age, or either older than him. She's a little older than me, but he wants to get with me, or he wanted to get with me. And it's also this complex that like these guys have from having Jezebelic moms and having Jezebelic girlfriends and also being Jezebelic themselves. Although he's a lower ranking one, but he has the I'm grown complex, which is really big with this issue. But they want to get with like younger girls that they see as not messed up yet, or that, and I wouldn't even say that necessarily with this guy. A lot of people have that issue too, but with this guy, it's for one the paraphilias, but also the fact that he sees me as different from like the large amount of extremely Jezebelic women around here who get that way, because one is generational, two all the essay that everybody's been through, and they don't really like the men anyways because they know that the men aren't safe. But due to their sexual addiction and desperation, people not being able to accept being alone, they won't stop dating people anyways, because for one, they attract what they are. People want to make domestic violence like a victim thing, but in domestic violence, really, two messed up people get together to torture each other, to be codependent on each other, and to torture their kids. Typically, usually, really. People always want to try to make the woman the victim, or try to find a victim in every situation, but you could either say everybody's a bad guy or everybody's a victim, I guess. But yeah, so even though the mom took up for her boyfriend that was essaying the daughter, this dude's daughter, she wanted him to do something about the fact that she's been dating the older dude that's like 50. But the dad was saying, well, she's grown and he can't really do anything about it anyways. But when he met the dude, he shook her hand. Now, as I've always said since I was 10, whenever people don't feel like they're being victimized in these situations because they're addicted to it and they're geronophiles, something that they have to keep in mind is that even if they don't see themselves as the victim, their kids and their kids' friends are going to be the victims. And also, he being the dad, was essayed, or quote-unquote dated, women in their 30s and stuff at 17 and younger and stuff like that, which is really common. Even same thing for my dad and my mom. And also, as I always mentioned, my dad was s3x trafficked by lawyers and judges who were racist as well. It's all generational. What was the other thing? I'm leaving something. Oh, yeah. I think the point I was getting at is that this guy was also able to point out that it was very obvious that certain guys, well, not certain guys, the guys around were treating me funny because they wanted to get with me. Like this one guy, he was like, that dude's being funny to you because he wants to get with you, and dudes don't know how to talk to a female and all that stuff like that, which I already knew that. Well, not in the way that he's putting it. The way he's putting it is like some bull crap, but I already knew, like, the main point is that he was treating me funny because he's mad that he can't get with me, or that I won't get with him. And the guy I've mainly been talking about, the dad dude in the situation, he's 48 or something. The guy that I was just talking about that started treating me especially funny because I wouldn't get with him, he's about 79. And what else was I gonna say with that? But yes, like, guys with perversion issues can tell stuff about other guys with perversion issues. And this is a really big issue here. And, like, I can see why this is going to be one of the many places, along with really the U.S. as a whole, that's going to eventually go underwater. Like, recently, some girl who was 18 was R-worded and unalived by some boys. One was 19, I think the other one was 17 or something. And then a guy was holding up a sign on some street. I seen the sign on a Facebook post, so, talking about how some young girls were getting sexually assaulted by a boss or Boston co-workers at a Chick-fil-A, which I was going to make a video about that, but I guess I could edit those clips into here before I forget. And then some girl also here who was 14 was stalked and I don't even know if I could say the word stabbed by a quote-unquote obsessed co-worker. And as someone who's dealt with paraphilias myself and limerence obsessions and romantic obsessions due to attachment issues from parent stuff, and then also sexual addiction, especially at, I sometimes forget the ages, 7 to, my limerence obsessions and stuff were worse from 7 to 12, 7 to 11. Yeah. At 7 to 11, I could definitely say that those types of issues lead nowhere good. They lead nowhere good. Not at all. And, I'm definitely forgetting something, though. There was something I really wanted to say, but I can't remember what it was. And something that people are always talking about, especially with, like, the feminism thing, which I can't speak for anywhere else. But I do know, one, it's rooted in occultic feminine goddess worship, and also that white supremacy is rooted in the occult as well. which that could be a whole other video, but I can't go into all that here, obviously. But the mainstream feminist movement, no, hold up. The feminist movement in America, at least, is completely, or at least it completely started off of white supremacy. Really, the whole social justice warrior, democratic, social, whatever in the world it's called thing, was all about the NWO, and there's a lot of fake stuff, just like with the whole fake anti-racism and the covert and subconscious racist white savior liberals. All that stuff was a mess because the quote-unquote black man didn't have any power to do anything anyways. But white guys had power, and their women didn't have that much power, and they were doing whatever to their women. And that's why the feminism thing really got how it did in America. But of course, True Yasharel especially were dragged onto these bandwagons to be used to march in the streets and push these different bullcrap things that didn't lead anywhere good. Not that I like misogyny either, it's all the same agenda. Which actually I've been meaning to talk about the one verse that shows the generational curse that's passed down with Adam and Eve, and like kind of like how the seed of the serpent was always going to be against the seed of the woman. But it was another one about how there was always going to be strife against Adam and Eve, and that's what I feel like that comes down from, that generational curse. But anyhow, feminism always pushes the idea that guys aren't the target, not even to each other, and also that boys don't get essayed. This is a really big thing. Guys are just taught to not talk about anything, and they're taught to handle their emotions by womanizing and being a quote-unquote player. The effeminate DL turned out thug persona. What else was it? I can't remember what the other thing was. It was something. Oh yeah, alcohol. That too. Those are some of the main couple things that guys are taught to use to keep quiet about different things that have happened to them. But realistically, most people, male and female, have been essayed and or had early sexual exposure. And regardless of what the few lucky people want to say, most people have been abused in the family systems or whatever in the world. Some are definitely worse than others. But I'm not really for the cognitive dissonance, something could always be worse, toxic positivity, which is really negativity bullcrap. But either way, like, the same stuff happens to boys, but people pretend that it doesn't. It is very funny because it's obvious that everybody's turned out, and sexual addiction starts somewhere from age 4 to 8, sometimes younger. Like, I know people that are pretty sure they were essayed by a parent because their first memories was masturbating at 2 and stuff like that. So, but then the funny thing is that now the school system and the medical system says that that's normal, but I mean, they normalize things that were really never supposed to happen and lead to sexual addiction and having a spirit spouse anyway, so you can't listen to anything that they say. Then the last thing that I want to throw in, the other day, I saw this girl again, and she comes to the resource center with her mom, and really, I see her at a lot of the different places with her mom. And one of the things that I always notice with people my age who have parents or a parent with them at all times, really, of course, in these environments especially, is that they don't have the same experiences in the same environments or in the same situation that I do. Like, for one, people don't approach her telling her about she's a grown woman and needs to be everybody's living sex slave, pretty much. Of course, she's not going to hear the insults about how everything is her fault and she made some bad decision, or how she should have been got a house and a car by now and learned how to drive and all that stuff. She doesn't have people telling her about needing a job. It's if people don't want jobs anyways. But another thing is that pretty much like the predatory people that come after me and make up these weird excuses, as I always talk about, for why they do. They're not going to do that because she's not an as easy target. Now, of course, she's with her mom, not a mom and a dad, and not just a dad. So people aren't going to be too scared of her mom. But for one, she's way bigger than I am. So the dudes are probably scared that, like, she'll beat them up or something anyways. But still, it's going to be a totally different situation for her. Because, as I always talk about, of course, when you're in the abuse situation, people already know that realistically you really don't have a family and that you're up for grabs because people can just come and do whatever they want to. That can also be worse depending on, like, how nonchalant your abusers are. Or maybe the other people that step up to abuse you are like flying monkeys and enablers or people with the Lucifer effect. But overall, when you visibly, obviously, don't have parents and don't have anyone around, like, even like really any older person, I wouldn't even say a parent, really any older person, especially one that's a dude, you're up for grabs. Not even just the sexual predators, but also to the people that'll come and, like, tell you about what your life is and accuse you of stuff and the different things that people do, especially when it comes to homeless hate. Like the people that will see it as their chance to be very openly racist to you. Like I mentioned, situations back in Cali, people like locking doors in my face and slamming doors to their businesses and locking them to places that I never even once thought about going in, but I was just like walking down the street. Like I remember I used to go talk to this one dude who had a music studio, and there's this parking lot I would have to walk through, and this one lady who of course was a Serpent Seed Euro J3W Rev 29, like most of the people around there really, because they're just Caucasian people, so you can't tell them from the rest of them. And so she owned this bakery, and she would always slam the door and lock it in my face. And one of the bad things about that, it's not about like getting offended, because I don't really care necessarily about all the bull crap, but the really bad thing is that these are the types of people that will call the police on you because they don't want you around, and they'll risk you going to jail or even getting unalived over nothing, to be honest. So yeah, there's that. Then, of course, the Let Me Help You lunatics, I mentioned the people that just, I don't even know how to really summarize them. They're manipulative, Jezebelic, and they try to offer help that they don't really want to give, quote-unquote help, to make themselves look good because they're religious or whatever, and they see it as their way of using you as a puzzle piece charity case to work their way into heaven. They just want to manipulate you and abuse you or steal money from you, take advantage of you somehow. Which I feel like they're worse than the sexual predators, but really all predatory people are the same. I even really want to make a video about that, like how abusive people, especially family systems and guardians, will tell you these horror stories of what ifs and fear, to push fear of the unknown and fearmonger you into not living your life. And they'll try to like trap you in the family system by telling you that like the moment you escape, you're gonna like have some R-word or chomo come snatch you up. And I mean, anything could happen, but it's like, but then when you always think that stuff is gonna happen, then you get labeled off as having OCD or anxiety or just being paranoid schizo or something. So it's really interesting. Just like I realized when I was 12, if you're not paranoid, you're detached from reality and don't understand how dangerous the world is, quote unquote. If you do understand how dangerous the world is, then you're paranoid, quote unquote. But anywho, to get back to the point, they tell you you're going to get R-word and that different stuff like that is going to happen. But sexual predators use the same manipulation tactics, the same, I didn't touch you, you're just crazy and grandiose, paranoid and all that stuff, all those different mental label things that abusive people do. All types of predatory people use the same little tactics. But to get back to the point, because I don't remember why I got there. So, This also reminds me of the thing that I mentioned with the girl who was 19 at the storm shelters back in NC, and how she was getting R-worded by the guys, and she couldn't stay at the women's shelter because these two toxic Jezebelic women who were bitter 4-year-olds, as I called them in my videos and the, what was it called, funny situation since running away playlist. Those two women kept threatening to fight her for no reason. They're really just jealous of the younger people, especially this one girl, because she was like 20 or 21 or something with a car and a job, and they were really jealous of her. And one of the bitty 40-year-olds was even in the military, and so she was always bragging about that. And it's like, and you see that where that got you. So, anyhow, as I mentioned, that girl was getting R-worded, and then she was she got pregnant, but then one of the dudes shoved an edible down her throat, so then she passed out or something happened, and she lost the baby, and the hospital staff treated her like crap because they just saw her as a homeless person and an addict, which is actually really interesting. It's funny how in a place like NC, they find a weed in your system because it was a weed gummy, and then they see us like a terrible, horrible addict, homeless person. But yet, in like the mostly white areas, like Cali, where like a lot of the drug scene stuff really started to get pushed throughout the media, which is why the white addict projection had to start for them to make themselves feel better. So now they tell themselves that everybody's on meth. But anywho, it's funny because in those areas there are so many different hardcore substances because they don't police their crime, so they can do it, which is why the situation has gotten worse and worse since especially the 60s in their communities. And now it's framed as the quote-unquote homeless crisis because the Caucasian community's drug issues has been made the face of homelessness. But it's like, how are they on all these different substances, but like, that's considered hard. I don't even know if it's coming out right, but that's considered hardcore drug use, typically. A lot of people don't consider weed as like a hardcore substance. Now, me personally, I feel like weed is worse than meth and stuff. I'm not for any of it. But it's just really interesting that they treated her like crap. Of course, because she was homeless, but also because they found weed in her system. That was really interesting. But anywho, so that girl is seen as an easy target, obviously, but at the same storm shelter, during the day, everybody would be sent on one place. There's this one girl who's the same age as me, but she had a mom and a dad with her, and she also had a couple of siblings. I think she had a brother or something like that. And of course, she was never approached for any sexual stuff. She was never told about how she needed to just figure things out and how she needed to have a plan, having people come up to her and condescendingly asking her, so what's your plan, or are you just giving up, and is this what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, and all that different accusatory and insulting stuff that people say when they see you as a younger person who doesn't have anyone else with you, and they see you as an easy target to do and say stupid stuff to, pretty much. That's really what it is, because like I've been saying a lot recently, in every situation, people do the same stuff to you, but they have a different excuse. Like I always say, when you're in an abuse situation, they'll say, it's your fault for whatever reason, or they'll just say they don't want to get involved. When you're, oh, wait a minute. And then they'll say they don't want to get involved because, your parents had the right to do whatever, or maybe if you're under 18, they'll say it's because you're a minor. But then when you're homeless, people will do some of the same stuff, but then their excuse will be it's because you're a bum. So pretty much it's always going to be the same unless you get above most people or you get outside society. And so, anywho, also because this girl had a family, she had parents with her, she was able to stay at the family shelter. And I noticed that sometimes, especially with little white girls, people sometimes let younger people who don't have parents with them stay at family shelters. But I've really only ever seen this with little white girls. Other than that, it's whatever and you're up for grabs. And it also goes into the thing that America doesn't want to have youth shelters. They refuse to have youth shelters due to ageism and adultism and stuff like that. So anyways, this girl was able to stay at the family shelter, which also meant that for another reason aside from her having parents with her, she was safer and staying in a safer spot. Even though, as I mentioned in a couple videos, the bus driver for the family shelter was a known chomo, and for whatever reason, his victim was able to come visit him at work and bring her baby she had that she supposedly told him it was his baby, but then she cheated on him with somebody else that was probably also a chomo. Someone was talking about how nice he was for deciding to still take care of the baby, and it's like, take care of and see the baby that he shouldn't be seen with somebody he shouldn't be with. I don't even really understand why it was even allowed for him to like even bring that girl or have that girl come up to his job anyways, but anywho, so yeah, he was still dangerous, obviously, the bus driver dude, but due to the parents being there, it did like lower a lot of risk. And so that's another thing I wanted to throw in. It's like, pretty much when your scene is up for grabs, things are gonna happen. And it's just, I don't even know what to say about it, to be honest. Now, me personally, especially when I was at this NC shelter, I was really mostly to myself. I didn't really talk to anybody because, for one, I could see like the toxicity that was going on there, which that was the most toxicity I've ever seen in like those types of environments, although I typically avoid shelters and resource centers. But when I was in NC, it was 15 degrees. Well, that's not even the issue. The issue was that it started snowing. That was the issue. It started snowing and there was nowhere else to really go to get food, but unfortunately the food also made me really sick there. So not because like the shelter, but just the food in certain places has more chemicals in it, and then it makes my blood sugar drop to 50. I don't really know what all it is with that, but yeah, so either way, it was kind of iffy and kind of didn't work out, but I didn't have like all the crazy stuff going because I first stayed away from the dudes, and I never had to like have issues with the women at the women's shelter because I stayed to myself and I wasn't there that long, maybe like 2 weeks or a little over that, because I was about to go back to the West Coast anyways, if I'm remembering right. One of the things that really helps in these types of environments is staying to yourself. But of course, if you're seen as like quiet and fearful, really, then people still feel some type of way. And it's kind of funny though, because it's like people are either terrified of me or they see me as adorable, cute, and funny, which is really interesting. Which reminds me of another thing I forgot. I'm definitely forgetting something though, but I don't know what it is. But the other thing though, this guy had came up to me and told me about how I was cute and adorable, and I had such a sweet and innocent face, and I looked like I could do no wrong. And then he was like, I'm probably old enough to be your dad. And he's 79 as well, because a lot of them are 79 or older. And it's like, you're hold up. You're 2+ decades older than my dad, actually. So really, you're old enough to be my grandpa. But it's like, And then, of course, people come and they'll just, like, take up for the person. Then they'll be like, in fact, no, this one lady came talking about how he just didn't take his medicine for his libido. Was it libido? Or was it Alzheimer's? No, I think that was another dude that she was trying to excuse his behavior by saying he has Alzheimer's. And that's one of the funny things I noticed about people that have been perpetually essayed throughout their life. They can always run around talking about how they were essayed, but they're always quick to get into relationships with essayers and also to take up for other random essayers. And I think another one of the things with it is that women who can't handle being alone and also have sexual issues themselves, and sexual addiction and are desperate and codependent, especially in environments like this, can't handle accepting the fact that all the dudes around are sexual predators, because then they don't have anybody to date, and then they can't have a new boyfriend every 2 weeks like they want to. So they just play these little mind games, and it's really annoying to me. And I noticed that people who run around talking about how much they're abused and they take throughout their life are often like this. Like with the dronophile thing I talk about often, most dronophiles never stop being dronophiles. They just eventually get to an age where they themselves or society feels like it's okay for them to be in these big age gaps. So like, they never stop dating people who are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years older than them. They just eventually get to an age where they feel like the age gap is okay. And then some of them will even say they feel like they're not dronophiles anymore, but really they still are. They're still dating people way older than them out of desperation and stuff, but they just don't see an issue with the age gap anymore because now they're a quote-unquote grown woman. But I mean, shoot, as far as most people could care, you were always a grown woman. Just like with the thing that I forgot to mention, when you visibly don't have parents or anyone older around, you're automatically seen as a man or woman. And that's another thing with the two girls I mentioned, the one with the mom and the dad, and the one in recent time who's always with her mom. People aren't going to approach her with the same insults, blame, accusations, police threats, sexual craziness, because she has a parent with her. But as far as most people care, I'm grown because I'm by myself and I'm up for grabs, and I'm seen as an easy target. Of course, there's still the people that are always gonna like do the whole "I'm grown, you're a child" thing, and that continues till 40 anyways. But especially for me now, that's still gonna happen, especially in like an environment like I'm in now. But I mean, both of those are used for ageism and abuse anyways. The way it goes is, quote-unquote, you're a child so I can abuse you, or quote-unquote, you're grown so you deserve to be abused in whatever way because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's really the same, especially if you're younger, but I feel like it's kind of the same either way, really. I'm totally forgetting something. Like, for example, I knew someone who was, she was 26 when I met her. And this was back when I was in the West Coast. She had met this guy who was very covert and subconsciously racist. He's one of the West Coast Mexicans that pretty much thinks they're white, although he wasn't even really necessarily white passing either. And so he really didn't like the lady or me because he was scared of both of us because of racial programming. In fact, he was security guard himself, which was already an issue. He wasn't technically supposed to date her because he was a security guard at one of the resource center places that she stayed at, but she said she met him before then anyways, but they didn't start talking till after because they saw each other more once he worked there. And that's also where I see like the bad power dynamic thing. He was 35, and a lot of people don't see anything wrong with the age gap between 25 to 28 and 35 to 37. And I mean, I really feel like, especially with how people are quote-unquote raised or really not raised, the trauma, the codependency, the reason that they're getting with the person, which is often because they're desperate, codependent, they have sexual addiction, and the other person has sexual addiction. And especially in this situation, because he was on the guard at a homeless shelter, resource center type place, she needed a place to go, although he was willingly living like van life. And I know people say that he's homeless anyways, but he was willingly, purposefully living van life to save up money while he did like different security jobs around the country or something like that. So realistically, if it wasn't for like his relative's address, where he technically did live as a permanent address because he didn't have like family issues, he wanted to do van life. If it wasn't for that address, then he would just be seen as another homeless person as well, which is really interesting how that works. But Anywho, one of the things is that he was always cheating on her, but realistically, as a common traumatized person, which she was a let me help you lunatic to me, which is why I was supposed to avoid her, but I didn't, which is my fault. But we attract what we are. So I attract these types of people who pretty much also have BPD symptoms, like the attachment issues and stuff like that. And so, anyhow, she was with this dude, and they agreed that they weren't gonna like date and that they were gonna have a one night stand. And then she was crying, talking about he was cheating on her, but I was like, I mean, realistically, he's not cheating. And then of course she would tell me different stuff about people's sex lives and different stuff that just was stuff she claimed she wanted advice for, but then she would start talking about the whole I'm growing, you're a child thing, and how are you going to tell me even though she kept asking me? Which is why I really tried to avoid her, but I felt bad for her, which was where I went wrong. So my fault still, but anywho, he was just always cheating on her, and he even threatened to call the police on her one day because he was scared she was going to fight him because she was crying. And he was always scared of me as well. He was always talking about calling the police on me and different stuff like that because he was scared of me. And it's like, this dude is really covertly and subconsciously, well, I'll say subconsciously racist. And people don't know what a race is, which is why he probably thinks he's white or something, or he thinks that Mexican is a race. But anywho, one of the things with this dude is that, one, regardless of her not seeing anything wrong with any of this, still she's a dronophile due to her trauma. And still a sexual addiction on both sides, and still he's getting how does the saying go? He's getting a kick out of the whole situation because he doesn't really like her. He's just agreeing to everything because he feels bad about her crying and her little manipulation type stuff that she does. And she probably usually, well, most people don't really see it as like manipulation, but I remember when I had accepted the fact that by 14th, the research and realizations that limerence is idolatry. I already knew about the sexual addiction stuff and all that. And that codependency is unintentional manipulation. And so, he just eventually agreed. But the thing is that she's younger than him, and she's considered out of his league. And that's really what he gets a kick out of with the whole situation. And dronophiles never stop being dronophiles. But another thing I could throw in, which goes into how like people that have been essayed throughout their life, they often support chomos the most, funnily enough, and they don't care about other people's essay. They'll just be like, well, I don't see anything wrong with it. Or they'll try to do the whole forgiveness thing where they'll be like, well, I mean, violence is bad, and you know, I mean, I had this happen to me, and you should, if somebody tries anything with you, you should just turn the other butt cheek. So anyways, anyhow, to get back to the point. Oh yeah, so I was telling her, you already know that all the guys around here want to essay us. They want to essay me and they want to essay you, and due to their perversion issues, when they're not accusing me of being your kid or your cousin or your son, or whatever else, they're always claiming that me and you were dating. And she would always talk about she really hated it because she wasn't a pedo. Hates that everybody around pretty much was mostly pedo, so they were accusing her of being one too. She let this one dude in her car to give him a ride to the store that she knows wants to R-word both of us. And I was like, why are you giving him a ride? And she was like, don't be rude, because, I mean, I give you rides, and why can't he get a ride? And it's like, you're being stupid, and then once you drop him off at the store, then you talk about how you felt uncomfortable. If you felt uncomfortable, you already know that these dudes all want to essay us, and a lot of them have even essayed 2-year-olds. Why in the world would you let him in your car to do this stupid nice person thing when you really have a lot of complexes and feel like you're better than everybody anyways, at least sometimes when you're splitting, and you feel like you're above all these people? Because for one, there's this constant thing with the white addict projection, as I call it. And when I was in Cali, a lot of the people around felt some type of way about me and her, because they're like, we refuse to believe that you two are the only two quote-unquote black people, and that you're not on substances like everybody else is, pretty much. And that made a lot of the white people mad, and they felt like we were just pretending to not be on substances to make people jealous or to act like we were better than them or something. And that also gave her a complex, aside from other things. They gave her a complex, especially due to like SA and stuff. And just like, you're trying to do this let me help you lunatic nice person thing in the most stupidest way possible. She'd also been assaulted by fake friends who did the usual go to the bar, spike drink thing, which is really common. And it also had something to do, at least from her words, with the fact that she was just abused her whole life and like beat up, and she was never really taught what to watch out for, which is typical for the abusive parents. And a lot of people don't even talk to their kids. They don't talk to their babies. They don't talk to their kids when they're older either. You're just like existing around each other. So it makes sense. But it's like, whenever, I don't know, they just like to take up for people that aren't safe people, that they know aren't safe people. Especially, well, no, this is a different situation from the lady that like couldn't accept these realities because she needs boyfriends. But it even goes back to that video I made over a year ago, which actually one of these dudes is now being exposed as of recent times. And I made the video talking about the Western mental illness obsession and how it really keeps people from realizing how predatory people can be. So like, for example, this dude that I mentioned in the video that's been being exposed lately was giving his quote-unquote daughter a purity ring that promised that she would stay a virgin. And some people are saying it was good, other people are saying he was a chomo, which is very obvious. And then of course somebody's going to be like, well, he's probably just awkward because he's autistic. People need to stop throwing up these made up bullcrap labels that are really just used to make up excuses to abuse people and for victim complexes, to try to erase away the reality of predatory behavior. And this is something that's really common. Whenever somebody's a sexual predator, some people would say that, oh, maybe they're just retarded, or maybe they're just slow, or something like that, or they just have Alzheimer's, things like that. In fact, this lady that I mentioned earlier, not the more recent one, like the racist boyfriend, but the other one, she even went on this whole rant to try to explain away the bullcrap by talking about how people with Alzheimer's are horny all the time, and when she worked at a nursing home at 15 and stuff like that with her mom, and all that is irrelevant. All that is really irrelevant. And so, what's the other thing? Although I'm sure that starvation of the brain, like Alzheimer's, it's definitely going to worsen the issues, but that has nothing to do with, like, the actual issue. Just like how when, quote-unquote, white people start to lose their mind, or they get on substances, they become more openly racist, which was a big thing in Cali. Like, there was a saying in Cali, you're not a homeless Californian until you run around screaming the N-word. Although I would say that, like, stuff like that is kind of, it's irrelevant kind of to me. I feel like the things that put me in danger are more serious, but none of it's good, but it's kind of like, I guess my mind is more focused on things that really, really put me in danger. I don't know if that's like a survival mode thing, but anywho, there's that saying. But yeah, I haven't really like watched any videos about like the dude being exposed now, because I make a lot of videos, but I don't really have time to watch videos. I know I heard something, or I seen something about role playing, and that one of the daughters, or maybe the daughter, was playing the daughter, but really they were like role playing SA and some stuff I can't really remember, but I had called that out like a whole year plus ago, and it's really obvious anyways. And then people say that they're just awkward because they have a disability. People need to stop with that, although people do say that chomoism is a big thing in the autism community due to like brain development stuff. I do feel like certain chromosome issues and genetic stuff and like wiring can make people more susceptible to demonization, but that's still kind of whatever. And it's kind of funny though, because due to the fact that so much more people are getting the autism label thrown on them for things like being able to read these days in America, when somebody says pedo stuff is a big thing in the autism community, another person will come and say, that's not true, that can't be true, because I'd claim this label pretty much, because that's what they're doing, claiming a label, and so it offends them. But people feel like that stuff is stigma. For one, that's what the mental health professionals are saying. Once you get the label is stigma. Whatever goes along with the label, whatever the psychiatrists and whoever else say, that is what it is. People like that, like news media and Hollywood and random people are making up stigma. The label itself is a stigma. The people who make the labels make the quote-unquote stigma, as people like to call it. If you don't want the stigma, don't claim made-up labels that are just insults anyways. Okay, so some things I forgot. Hopefully I have enough storage space to even edit this in. So, I've been wanting to mention for months that if a guy is ever asking you if you have pads and stuff, and acting like he's trying to like see if you're running out of feminine products, which is always going to be really interesting. He's just trying to find a way to range your age to see if you're old enough to get with or not. That's all that is. And I know a lot of times people start their period at like 10, and the girls start puberty at like 8. And so yeah, there's that. I've been wanting to mention that for months. And I know a lot of people aren't going to want to believe that, but the thing is, I'm really good at picking up on just different games, but sometimes I like the games aren't there. Not in these types of situations, but in separate friendship situations, like I mentioned back when I was still doing the friend bull crap, my old abusive friend video, re-upload, or one of them. That's one example of the type of situations where I sometimes will like ignore them games, but overall, every time I talk to people, I kind of regret it, and I start trying to figure out how to like end the quote-unquote friendship or whatever, because really it's just too confusing and stressful for me, but that's kind of irrelevant. But I'm good at picking up the manipulation, but people issues are definitely hard to deal with. And so then the other thing, I mentioned before that the demons and people tell people all your business pretty much. So regardless of what you may tell people, like if you tell them you're not homeless, or if you tell them that you do have parents, or you do have a dad, or your older brother is gonna beat them up if they try to do anything, the demons in them will often tell them that you're lying, and so they'll just brush off anything you say. Just like how when I was still in Cali, the white people were always claiming that they thought I was a 11 or 14-year-old black boy, and that was their excuse to constantly call the police on me. No matter how much I kept telling them that I wasn't 11 or 14 or a boy, not that people really care anyways. There was a lot of racial stuff with that, obviously, but they would still call the police on me anyways. And then also I mentioned that when you're laying low, the demons and people always tell them that if you're a missing person and how old you are and stuff like that. But when you get to an area where you don't have to lay low anymore, sometimes they'll stop telling people that you're 11 or whatever, and they'll tell people that you're even way older than you are. And then that'll be people's excuse to want to say you, or even want to blame you for stuff, but they'll blame you for stuff regardless, really. Or the demons will, of course, let people know that you're 16 or older, which is considered one of the primes. 16 to 26 is considered the prime for, or one of the primes for young men and women, and for older people to get with them. But as people say, 28 isn't young, it's a danger zone, so you gotta go lower than that. Because by then they're messed up and quote-unquote ran through and all that bull crap. So anywho, of course, this guy was saying, a separate guy, not the pad one, was, this was at this church's Thanksgiving dinner that somebody told me about. And he was saying that he can tell how old I am because of my aura, quote-unquote. I'm pretty sure somebody just told him how old they think I am. And it's really unfortunate because, it was right after, I'm sure purposely, right after this 59-year-old who called himself preaching was asking me about if I was legal. And the thing about it is that, especially if you're 16 plus, but especially 14 plus as well, really anybody who doesn't have like a older person with them that people feel would maybe like protect you, but especially if you're 14 plus, that's the prime even more. But they're looking for people that are mostly 16 plus. I know the AOC is like 16 plus, and it's really unfortunate. And then it's like, no matter what I tell people, and honestly I typically tell people I'm like 25 or older, but most people around here believe I'm like 30 anyways, because different stuff, but like things that people believe and feel, and who people feel like should be out on their own because of people wanting to hold their kids captive in weird, toxic, dysfunctional, cultural cult bullcrap. It's like, no matter what you tell people, people are always gonna say whatever.